What's up, Taiwan? All right. This is my first time over here. I've been wanting to come to Taiwan for years now, and I'm so happy for Taiwan Blockchain Week to finally give me an excuse to come over here. So thank you very much. I'm so excited to see everyone else building in Web3, 9,000 miles away from my home in Texas. This truly is an amazing movement that we're all part of. And I'm excited to talk today with two other people here, Taiwan natives. And we're going to learn about sustainability and impact in blockchain. Joining me today, we have Kuan-Ning, Tseng, and you are the founder of Fund the Global. And we have Jeremy Furster, the Global Head of Enterprise for the Cardano Foundation. So thank you so much for joining us today. Let's start off just at a very, very high level. To each of us, what is sustainability in the first place? What does that really mean?
I'll give it to Jeremy first.
All right, thank you. And it's great to see everyone here. So in case you don't know, I've been living in Taiwan for 12 years. A long time ago, there was a group of people who thought that Taiwan could be a map for blockchain and cryptocurrency adoption. And there were as many efforts done back in 2016 to 2018 to kind of jumpstart that initiative. There was a long time ago an event called Block City, which at that time was like one of the larger events for blockchain and started to bring in internationals. And I think it's very, very awesome to see from Bu Zhi DAO a group of Taiwanese Americans and overseas people who are connected to Taiwan, and also the local Taiwanese community really step up and bring out such an excellent event. So for everyone who's involved in that process, give yourself a round of applause. It's been great. And you are part of sustainability, is people who continue to build applications and build infrastructure on top of public blockchains. So when we're thinking about sustainability with a public blockchain, there's also some elements on the infrastructure layer, which you need to be predictable, you need to be reliable, and you need to be resilient. So if we're thinking of using blockchains for critical applications, and we're really thinking about blockchain as a technology that will be here for 10 years and 20 years in the future and beyond that, then predictability is that when you have these blueprints or you have statements that says this is how blockchain works, then that is actually what gets implemented on code. So, having situations like formal specifications or having code audit reviews that really kind of reinforces that this code does work as intended. That's very important for sustainability, because you don't want to have some critical flaw in the system. Reliable comes down to when you're scaling, and we're thinking about using blockchains not just for one application, but for mass market use. And we're in this period of time when we're looking at areas such as cross-chain or scalability on a layer 1 or layer 2 scalability. And that is something that is very important when we think about these type of market interactions and integrations. Resilience is that it's something that you don't have a single point of failure. So is there one core company that's controlling the development of a blockchain? And is there one sole code base which needs to be leveraged to deploy an application? So having diversity in development options, having diversities in the different nodes that you can access, having open source resources is also very critical to ensure sustainability over time. And what it allows for is multiple entities interacting and participating, not just for outside events and applications, but ensuring that development does continue. So that's a good overview on the infrastructure side.
I think that's a great take on the technical ecosystem of sustainability. How about the environmental ecosystem of sustainability? What does that mean?
I think that is a really interesting question, and then I have been asking myself since years. So I believe also a lot of people, a lot of you from the audience, you are all Taiwan native. And I'm actually from Taichung. And I want to ask you, have you ever built a tree house? Can you raise your hand? No? Okay. Is there anybody swimming in the rivers before in Taiwan? Okay, at least we have. No more than 10. Good job. And I have never done that. And most of you also have never done that. That is sad, because I have always considered myself as a super privileged. You know, we are digital native, we grew up with internet, super good infrastructure. But when my dad told me, the neighborhood we used to live over there used to be rainforest. And he catch frogs in the river, he built tree house and stuff. But like, we lost it just between generations, just 25 years. So I start reflecting my lifestyle and then to think about, I want to have child, you know, I want to have 12 kids, then they can play in FIFA, for instance. So how can they have a livable environment? And that is something I'm really thinking about. And then when I'm eating Korean barbecue, I love it. I think about my carbon footprint sometimes. And then I fly from NFT London to NFT New York. I also think about, should I compensate it? And when I was thinking about that, I think everybody has this need, you know, everybody has a super high level of consciousness here, I believe. Otherwise, we wouldn't sit in this panel. And how can you do it? You don't feel motivated to shop like carbon credits, right? I mean, you know, you have to go a long way of due diligence to see if the project is really legit and so on. So we create a platform to do to provide a solution for that, and it's Fund the Planet. And we will talk about this just maybe later. Yeah.
So the other word that's come to our minds recently is the word impact. And there's a flood of impact funds that are now coming into the world where there's just large chunks of funds that are set aside to invest in things that make the world a better place, not necessarily deliver the most return on investment to the VC firm. And this is an entirely different way of thinking about things for a lot of people, but there's many people here in the crypto space that have been thinking about something like that their entire lives, saying, if I ever get rich, I'm going to do this with my money, I'm going to do that with my money. Many of us have been in this space now for a couple different cycles, and we're trying to think, how do we now use our new generated wealth to make the world a better place? And those who haven't are just another cycle away from being able to ask themselves that question. So what comes with all the wealth that's created? Well, we can have, you know, another 5,000 decentralized exchanges, or we can have something that's actually cleaning up pollution, or we can have something that is solving corruption in politics, and many, many more use cases. So I want to have like a little brainstorming session between us and ask, you know, what are some ways that blockchain and cryptocurrency and digital assets can impact the entire world? What do you think?
Well, I think one thing to focus on first is the role of carbon credits. Carbon credits is sometimes seen as like a Band-Aid to the actual problem. And a lot of firms initially were jumping into this environment to say, well, if I want to be considered green, then I will just buy a carbon credit. And I can tell everyone, well, look, I have mitigated my effect on the environment. I think that narrative was solid for about 2 days. And what will happen is that people come in and say, well, that's not good enough. Your core operations is not changing. And the actual carbon credit itself, do we know what this is connected to? Is there any visibility on if there's actually a carbon being sequestered? And is that changing the way that things are being done? So the demand for transparency has really been that push to find more information about what is actually happening on the ground and being able to kind of both protect it and showcase what is actually occurring. So that's kind of the first thing about impact, is that what blockchain technology provides is that flexible tech stack to say, this is public infrastructure. And what we can do is we can make these records to show of the actual ESG efforts that we're making and bring transparency to that. We can demonstrate exactly where these operations are occurring and also see that there's no like double counting of those efforts. But that might be something you may want to talk about further. The other thing that's nice about that is flexibility within funding. So with cryptocurrencies, this is often what becomes like a non, like, it is funding that is flexible. So most of the times if you are a nonprofit or you are some sort of agency and you say, I'm raising funds to save the rainforest, that's already predetermined on how these funds get used. And many times for these organizations, they don't have enough funding themselves to like do everything that they plan to do. So cryptocurrencies becomes that kind of free cash bucket that says, okay, we can determine now how to like spend this. And you can also then tap into like a global ecosystem of people who can freely be able to move funds around the world into a specific country, with the infrastructure that we have today for like crypto to fiat trading.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So I would just like to mention that like 2 months ago, I was in UK to a CFO summit, and I was talking about how blockchain can really help all the CFOs sitting over there to prove your transparency and traceability. And then I made them raise their eyebrows because blockchain really has the trait of that. And how can you do it? What kind of use case do you have? So one of the company that I know is that they acquire Amazon rainforest, they buy it, and then afterwards they fractionize it, and then tokenize each fraction into NFTs. So every company, every people, if you say, hey, I protect 10 square meter of rainforest, 10 hectares of rainforest, how can you prove it? You just have to hold one NFT, and then that is what we are doing. That is what Fund the Planet is doing. And after the conference, actually a lot of like Web2 traditional kind of CFOs, they are really start open their mind and then trying to embrace this kind of new technology. And NFT itself, and then also blockchain itself, is that just a fancy database we previously talked about? I think Jeremy have a better knowledge over there. But I do believe that Web3 technology can really solve the traditional issue, but people really have to get educated, and then we need to have more users of blockchains.
Yeah, and I think, to your point, crypto can really enable this kind of thing with its cash bucket. For too long, doing good in the world has not been incentivized. If anything, it's been de-incentivized because there's no funding for it. It's simply, oh, you want to go out and do good, clean out the world? Cool, have fun, do your own thing. Meanwhile, there's hundreds of millions of dollars raised for a new exchange every day, or some other leverage platform that's already solved a problem, or it's not contributing anything good to the world after it leaves that actual platform. So what other use cases can we potentially use blockchain for to help bring funding and encourage good behavior on the planet?
So in Cardano, I helped design the Cardano forest. And this was to actually kind of offset the CO2 footprint of the blockchain ecosystem. And currently, there's no real international standard that exists to say what is the footprint of a blockchain ecosystem. Mainly that's because when you are decentralized technology and you have miners, you have block producers, you're not able to really audit their infrastructure setup. So I don't know from the actual block production layer what is the amount of energy that is being consumed for those activities. But we do have some good estimates on this. And so we raised funding through what was called a Global Impact Challenge that ignited every ADA holder in the world to say, hey, let's come together and really do something good through what was deemed a land restoration NFT. So we raised funding, and 1 ADA equaled 1 tree planted in Kenya, which was an area that was suffered by massive flooding that kind of destroyed the local environment. It wiped away all the wildlife and all the trees that were there, and the people had to move to another crowded city. So when we were looking at the actual planting of the trees, and I think this is the difference when we talk about impact, is about traceability and transparency. The planting site details were then attached to each NFT. And when you're funding the forest, you could then redeem this tree token for each planting site, whether it be you want to redeem for 5 trees, 5,000, 50,000 trees. And that was all done on chain. And what we have there is that, because when we say that blockchain is an expensive database, well, that's true, but this database is about verification data. So a good thing about every blockchain is that you know that every asset is unique. You have to build in the actual, so that's traceable. And we know that there is a payment coming from an individual unique wallet. But the transparency side is to say, well, who is actually buying that information? And so that's what you can attach to an NFT, is bringing out more visibility to the size of the planting site, who has owned it, and ensure that other people are not buying the same plot of land. So that's very good for impact. The other side that's good for impact is just leveraging a blockchain for these kind of transparency reports. So going beyond a data hash to say I've made an immutable record, but actually having a record that says, just like you would for financial statements and that auditing approach, where you have a third party who validates this information, you try to replicate that onto a blockchain with an integrated approach of using digital identities and using digital signatures that creates real economic utility to any sort of transparency initiative. So maybe it's for the Red Cross or some sort of funding initiative, and you want to know, well, how is this cryptocurrency being spent? And that's a way to kind of show this to people on the use of funds.
Yeah, I think one thing you do really impressive is your community is actually doing it because a lot of company indeed donate money, but they don't really know what's the source of the project they donate the money, and in the end it will fire back, because once the project has double counting issue, for instance, or any kind of defect, then what will be harmful is the company itself. So I think it's really good that you know the entire process, how it has to been done, and just everything. So I think that's incredible. And another use case, I would just say Fund the Planet as well. And so for instance, each NFT will represent a plot of Amazon rainforest. So in case anybody's going to the party later, we do have a sticker. So with each sticker, it stands for 1 square meter of rainforest protected, which I already gave it to both of you. And then you can really scan the QR code, and then you can just zoom in from the space and then go into Peruvian rainforest, listen to the sound right now, what kind of voice there it is, and then you can see the plot of land you are protecting. And that is what blockchain can help us to do, because you upload the geo coordinates, and then you do a due diligence of the environmental impact of this plot of land, just like you said. There's no double counting how big of the tree, the area you are planting, then this belongs to you. And then NFT, which is really good, it's because it can really go down to the individual level, because traditionally carbon credits only available for the companies. And then with us, for instance, I concerning myself, my ecological footprint, how can I find a solution for that? NFT can do it. So for instance, me, with my lifestyle, I need to own, for instance, 11 rainforest tokens. And then afterwards, I can give it to my children. And then my children's CO2 footprint also compensated. Do I want to do more? I know in Kenya, I know in South Africa, there are a lot of people are suffering because of historical reasons, and then I can also do more. And in the end of the day, if you're a business, you can empower your end users. If your customer is not happy, then you wouldn't be happy as well because you wouldn't earn money. So how NFT can really be in different kind of format, phases, and then how people can use it is really incredible. And of course, some other projects plan the coral reefs, some other projects protect marine animals. There are a lot of people are doing that. And I know the project from Cardano as well. They fund the money from the NFT and then do the mushroom R&D because mushroom is essential for human being as well. So yeah, just a lot of use case.
Yeah. I think one of the most exciting new niches in crypto is called decentralized science. There's maybe only 12 to 15 projects in existence that I'm aware of right now, but a lot of them are tackling different sources of research and decentralizing the funding that actually goes into scientific initiatives. And I think this is huge because science for all of human history has been manipulated by whatever the donors have wanted the scientists to confirm for them. And that gets passed on for generations as truth, but it's not. These experiments are rigged. So for the first time ever, we have a chance to have agenda agnostic funding where a scientist can simply come in and do an experiment without being told what the conclusion is supposed to be. And they can find out what the truth is. And all these experiments, failure after failure after failure, or trial after trial after trial until success, can be put on blockchain. So forever, this information can't be manipulated. JP Morgan can't come burn down someone's lab. And this can actually change the fundamental truth that all of us base our decisions on today. And this can also be a way for many impact funds out there to donate resources into stable coins and incentivize many people who are going out and either planting new trees or cleaning up trash to get paid for their work. Aside from just our own personal things, there's a much bigger problem, and that's many regions of the world that don't care about this at all. And that runs deep within their tradition, and no matter what we do here on stage, that's not going to impact their choices whatsoever. But if there's several people in that environment that don't want to live in trash anymore, and they can make a living cleaning up after their fellow citizens and getting things going in their area that these impact funds that are throwing billions of dollars at this problem are funding, we may actually get some traction going in the right direction as a whole. So I think many of these impact funds, are not yet known, but if there's anyone out there who is a VC or runs a hedge fund and is considering making an allocation just to making the world around you better, come talk to me. My venture capital firm, Collective Ventures, is going to be completely transitioning into an impact fund in 2023. And for that, it's an entirely different way of thinking of investing. You're not looking at what's going to make a 10x or 100x and doing risk-adjusted returns. You're looking at completely different things like how many people can this technology impact? How many more metric tons of food could this produce by coordinating agricultural efforts across the globe, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to challenge any builders in the audience today, really think about what you're building, because every dollar and every line of code is power in this world. And you can contribute anything you want. And we're so early in this amazing movement in Web3 that we can shape things to be however we want to be shaped. So I encourage you to really think about, to you, what is the right way to build the new world? How should it look? How should carbon credits be calculated and handled on chain? And I want to pose that question to both of you. How should this new world of ESG on Web3 look? We've talked about the problems, how it is currently. What do the solutions look like in your opinions?
So part of that is looking at the, if you're going to launch an application, you need to understand, are there any limitations on that blockchain? There are specific building blocks. So the main thing to think about at first is, okay, I'm going to make a transaction. And my first benefit is to say that this is an immutable record that was made at a specific point in time. Now, when you do that, that's great. This is publicly available. But what you're really lacking now is that third-party verification and the ability to kind of track the asset or the data records that you're intending to maintain, to be unchanged. So when you're making a transaction, you have, a lot of times, you know, we first talk about what was the promise of blockchain with Bitcoin, and all these different industries kind of came up about this with like verified records. But on Bitcoin, within a transaction, you only have 70 bytes of data, which is basically a data hash. So you can't really understand this data hash. That's like garbage in, garbage out. But on other blockchains, you have a lot more capacity for data storage. So what you can do is give a lot of human readable information and other components. So if I have a data hash, you might want to have a link to where that data is being stored at. So that data storage layer, that might be a company web server, which is okay, or it might be IPFS or Airweave. It could be very flexible. But that data repository is connected to that data hash. So if you have access to the repository, you can allow a third party to recreate a data hash and see that that data has not been changed. Now, if I were to come in and say, well, I'm protecting the rainforest, here's 10 more transactions. How do we know which transactions are authentic? So in the authenticity process, that's also part of third-party verification. You need to have a way to express which transaction is the real one, and for end users to interpret that very easily. So normally what you would have then is that embedded digital identity system to say, okay, this is really a transaction from Fund the Planet. And they have if you have a digital identity and you have a digital signature, what you can do is you can reverse a digital signature to like see the public keys of a digital identity or an SSI type approach, if it's like a portable version of digital ID. So you have to match the application with the technique that you are looking at. But if you combine hashes with a data storage link, digital identity, and digital signatures, you have a robust system that really shows like authentic information of a record where you're tracking the actual data set that's off the blockchain. And so what the blockchain does is really serving as that single source of truth that you know that if something were to be changed from a company, then like there's a problem. And so now the alarms are being sounded through the blockchain record.
Yeah, it's one thing to say you're going to do something, it's another to prove it.
Yeah, so one thing it comes to my mind about the future, I always give the advice based on where I am. So since now I'm in Taiwan, I would definitely say, because I live in Europe, and I do know that Taiwan is a really big OEM country. And then that is why the entire global supply chain in the near future, really, really soon, will definitely be affected, because regulation is coming. Like, what's your carbon footprint? And then you really need to be prepared about your report, be transparent. Like Jeremy's just said, everything about technology, you can use blockchain technology to improve your traceability. Because, for instance, Nike, for instance, Adidas, and then all the car manufacturers as well, TSMC, they are all preparing for this. And if you are personally involved to the global supply chain of any kind of foreign companies, then you really have to think about this and then incorporate blockchain technology to solve your auditing issue. I would say that is the top. So yeah, that is my last word.
Yeah, and just to go on top of that, I think a transparent global supply chain across many blockchains and platforms, being piped into several analytics engines to make intelligent decisions on what crops are planted, where and when, and where's the market cycles of these individual crops and commodities. We've seen Cuba go from the 29th GDP in the world to one of the poorest nations in the world because they didn't know that their sugar was overpriced. And these little things can be avoided. Famine can be avoided if we just work together and share our data instead of siloing it. So I encourage everyone out there who's building anything, build an open API, share it, let anything link into what you're collecting for free so we can make the world a better place together. Thank you, everyone, for coming to our talk and attending day one here at Taiwan Blockchain Week. Looking forward to seeing everyone again tomorrow. I don't know if I'm supposed to be closing this out, but I'm sure the MC is running out of breath at this point.
No, you're good, you're good.
Hey, we're right on time. 7 seconds to go. How about that? Great job, panel. Let's get a picture real quick.